Chosen one, anchor your spirit to every word I am about to say. That weight you have been carrying, the one sitting on your chest like a stone you cannot name, I need you to set it down right now, because it is over. Not almost over, not nearing the end, over. The struggle that has had its hands around your life for this entire season, the confusion, the warfare, the sleepless nights, the moments where you could not tell if you were moving forward or just surviving, it ends here. And the reason it ends is not luck. It is not chance. It is because of what you have done. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. God did. This is a divine appointment, written before the foundations of the earth were ever laid, scheduled for this exact moment in your life. You are standing at the threshold of the conclusion of the hardest chapter you have ever lived. In the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the official decree that declares this season closed. I am going to show you the exact moment this week when you unknowingly signed the enemy's eviction notice. And at the end, I am going to give you the declaration that seals this door shut permanently so it can never reopen. Do not click away. Your future self is on the other side of this message. If you leave before the end, you leave before the verdict is read. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. It has not just been quiet. It has been heavy. A strange, thick heaviness that is difficult to explain to anyone who has not felt it themselves. Maybe you were lying in bed this week, staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning, unable to sleep, running the same questions through your mind on a loop. Why is this taking so long? What did I do wrong? Is this ever going to change? Or maybe it was yesterday, sitting somewhere alone, and without warning, a wave of exhaustion hit you so deep it felt like it was in your bones. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that comes from carrying something too heavy for too long. You feel like you have been suspended between two worlds, the life you were living before and the life you were promised. And in that in-between space, something has started to whisper. The enemy has been planting a very specific lie in that silence. Listen to your own thoughts and you will hear it. He has been telling you that the reason everything feels stalled is because of something you did. He has been replaying a moment from this past week over and over in your mind. Maybe it was that moment when you walked away instead of pushing through. That moment when you went quiet instead of fighting back. That moment when you let go of something you thought you were supposed to hold on to. The accuser has been pointing to that moment and telling you that was the mistake. That was the turning point. That because of what you did, or what you did not do, the blessing has been delayed, the door has closed, and you have disqualified yourself from what was promised. But I need you to hear what the Word of God actually says about this season. Nahum 1:9 declares, "What do you conspire against the Lord? He will make an utter end of it. Affliction shall not rise up the second time." Read that again. Affliction shall not rise up the second time. The enemy has been trying to convince you that you are in a cycle, that you have gone back to the beginning, that the same battle is restarting and you have to fight your way through the wilderness one more time because of your choices. That is a lie constructed specifically to exhaust you. You are not in a cycle. You are in a conclusion. Think back to that moment this week when you went quiet, when you chose not to react, when you swallowed the words you wanted to say, walked away from the person or the situation that was trying to pull you back, and sat in the discomfort of your own restraint. You thought that was weakness. You thought that silence was surrender. But hear me clearly, that was not weakness. That was warfare. That specific act of restraint was the moment you handed heaven the legal authority to close this chapter on your behalf. You did not disqualify yourself from the blessing. You activated it. That silence was the signature. That walk away was the weapon. That moment you thought was your failure was the moment you won. The heaviness you feel right now is not the weight of punishment. It is the weight of finality. It is the pressure of a cord that has been stretched to its absolute limit right before it snaps. The reason it feels unbearable is because you are not at the beginning of something hard. You are at the end of it. Congratulations. It is all over. You will never have to go through that again, and I am about to show you exactly why. Here is what most people never get to see. They feel the ending. They sense it. They almost touch it. But because they do not understand what an ending looks like in the spiritual realm, they walk away from it, thinking it is still a beginning. It is a peculiar spiritual myopia, a kind of divine nearsightedness where the final brushstroke of a masterpiece is mistaken for a preliminary sketch. They perceive the final chord of a symphony not as a resonant conclusion, but as a dissonant pause awaiting another movement. They stand at the precipice of their longed-for breakthrough, their hands outstretched, almost grazing the hem of the garment of victory, yet their minds are still searching for the faint glimmers of a new dawn, missing the blazing noon of completion. And so the breakthrough arrives, unfolding with the quiet majesty of a sunrise after a long night. But they are not there to receive it, because they spent so long waiting for a conceptual distant door to open, a future portal, that they never noticed the one behind them. The very gateway to their past struggles had already been sealed shut, definitively, irrevocably, by the hand of heaven. This isn't just a closing, it's a divine lockdown of all that once held you captive, a cosmic barrier against recurrence. That sealed door is not abandonment, it is the epitome of divine care. That sealed door is profound, intentional protection. It is a sacred barrier, forged in the fires of your endurance and sealed with the authority of the Almighty. This spiritual sealing means that the insidious things that once had easy access to you, the recurring patterns of self-sabotage, the toxic relationships that drained your spirit, the spirit of confusion that whispered lies into your peace, the agonizing cycle of almost but not quite that left you perpetually on the brink of joy without ever fully stepping in, can no longer find its way back in. Imagine a fortress whose gates are now unbreachable, not to keep you out, but to secure your sanctuary within. You are not locked out of your destiny, rather, the enemy is locked out of your life. Its access codes have been permanently deactivated, its pathways eradicated, its dark tendrils unable to re-establish any foothold. This is not a punitive measure, but a liberating act of grace, a divine demarcation between your past wilderness and your promised land. And here is where it goes deeper, compelling us to peer beneath the surface of what you thought you knew. You have to understand what has actually been at war this entire season, because I assure you, it was not what your limited human perception told you. You have been tirelessly fighting circumstances, grappling with external events like a ship battling a tempest. You have been praying against situations, believing the solution lay in altering the visible landscape of your life. You have been rebuking outcomes, striving to reverse the manifest results of forces you couldn't fully discern. But the real battlefield, the true theater of this spiritual conflict, was never out there, in the fluctuating tides of your finances, the shifting sands of your relationships, or the elusive opportunities that seem to slip through your grasp. The profound and often unseen war was internal. It was the intricate architecture of your identity, the very blueprint of your being. It was the deep, subterranean belief system about who you are at your core, what you truly deserve from the hand of a benevolent God, and whether heaven actually moves on your behalf specifically, or if you are merely an afterthought in the grand divine tapestry. The enemy was never primarily after your finances. Those material resources are merely symptoms. He was not truly after your relationship. That partnership is but a reflection. He was not fundamentally after your opportunity. that open door is simply an expression. He was after something far more foundational and insidious. He was after your theology. He wanted to corrupt the very way you see God, to distort the lens through which you perceive divine love and power. Because if he could cunningly twist your perception, if he could make you truly believe that heaven is slow in its responsiveness, that divine promises, like perishable goods, expire with time and circumstance, that God finishes things for other people with swift decisiveness, but stalls for you, leaving you in a perpetual state of limbo and delay, then he would not need to exert any further effort to take your blessing. You, in your weariness and distorted understanding, would hand it back yourself, surrendering what was already yours by divine decree, convinced it was never truly meant for you. This internal erosion of faith is the enemy's most potent weapon, turning your own mind into a prison. Think of Elijah, not the iconic triumphant Elijah standing on Mount Carmel, a colossal figure calling fire from heaven, defying the prophets of Baal and shattering their false gods. Every preacher and Sunday school lesson goes there, highlighting the spectacular display of divine power. No, let us rather think of the Elijah sitting under the desolate juniper tree afterward, a stark contrast to his recent glory. Victory was still fresh on his hands, the echoes of Baal's defeat still ringing, the blessed sound of rain finally falling on the parched, dry land, a testament to God's faithfulness. And yet there he was, utterly depleted, running from the threats of Jezebel, a solitary figure consumed by despair. He was not celebrating, he was begging God to take his life. His lament was raw, visceral, echoing the cries of a soul pushed beyond its limit. I am done, I have had enough. I am the only one left, and I cannot do this anymore. This was not a prophet doubting God's existence, but a man profoundly exhausted by the very intensity of divine assignment. And here is what heaven sent him in that moment. Not a fiery sermon about his lack of faith, not a sharp rebuke for his fear, not a theological lecture on God's omnipotence. None of the things we, in our human wisdom, might think a disheartened prophet needs. Instead, heaven sent pure, unadulterated tenderness, manifested through the ministry of an angel. The angel provided bread baked on coals, a simple, warm sustenance, water, cool and life-giving, rest, deep and undisturbed. The angel touched him twice, gently waking him, urging him to arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you. God met Elijah's profound exhaustion with compassionate tenderness, not with correction or condemnation. And then, and only then, after the physical and emotional restoration began, he whispered, not in the mighty wind that tore mountains and shattered rocks, not in the earthquake that shook the very foundations of the earth, not in the consuming fire that scorched the land, but in the still, small voice, the gentle sound, the softest of whispers, a profound intimacy that could only be perceived by a soul no longer reeling from the shock of battle. Because people in that level of depletion, those who are truly running on empty, cannot receive thunder. They cannot absorb grand pronouncements. Such intensity would only overwhelm their fragile state. They need proximity. They need the gentle presence, the tender hand, the quiet reassurance that speaks directly to the aching heart, not the weary mind. And what I need you to hear, to truly absorb into the deepest parts of your being, is this: that same sacred proximity, that divine tenderness, is precisely what you have been experiencing in the quiet seasons of your life. That profound heaviness that settled upon you, making you feel isolated and distant from God, was actually a profound closeness, heaven drawing in so near that the spiritual atmosphere became dense with its presence. That deafening silence, which felt like heaven had gone dark, like the cosmic lights had been extinguished and you were left utterly alone in the void, was actually heaven leaning in close enough to whisper, its breath stirring the very hairs on your neck, its voice too soft for the clamor of the world, only audible in the deepest stillness. You were not abandoned in that stillness, in that perceived desolation. Far from it. You were being meticulously tended to, like a cherished garden in a drought, or a beloved child recovering from illness. You were twice touched, just like Elijah, once to awaken you to the need for restoration, and again to empower you for the path ahead. You were being prepared for a journey, a divine assignment that requires your full, undivided strength, not the leftover fragments of someone who has been running on empty, fueled by sheer willpower and remnants of hope for an entire season. This period was not a void, it was a sanctuary of profound spiritual recalibration. But here is something most people miss entirely, a crucial spiritual principle, often overlooked in our haste to move forward. The provision always precedes the instruction. The nourishing bread came before Elijah was given the next assignment. The profound rest came before the revelation of God's plan and presence. This is a fundamental law of the kingdom. God does not send you hungry into battle. He does not launch you into a new season without first fortifying your spirit, soul, and body. And the deep restorative nourishment that has been flowing into you, subtly yet powerfully, through the very moments of quietness and perceived absence that you struggled through. That was not a sign of neglect. That was preparation food. It was journey food, specially tailored sustenance designed for the unique challenges and opportunities awaiting you. It was strength for what is now opening, not what is now closing. It was the spiritual equivalent of packing your bags and filling your canteen before embarking on a grand expedition, ensuring you have every resource necessary for the victorious path ahead. Stay with me, lean in even closer, because what is coming next in this message is not merely another insight. It is the layer that breaks the cycle at its actual root, not just its superficial manifestations, but at the very core of what has held you back, disrupting the pattern of your struggle with a liberating truth that redefines your entire approach. You have been thinking about breakthrough as a future event, a distant glimmer on the horizon, a coming thing, something that awaits you in a nebulous future, a specific date on a divine calendar that you have not yet arrived at, a prize to be attained after further struggle and effort. And that framework, as sincere as it is, as rooted in diligent faith as it may feel, has inadvertently been keeping you in a passive position of waiting when heaven has unequivocally been calling you into an active posture of receiving. There is a profound, often misunderstood difference between these two states, a chasm as wide as the heavens. Waiting is largely passive. It often implies an empty-handedness, a gaze fixed on what has not yet manifested, a posture of yearning for something external to arrive. It is standing idly by the shore, hoping for the tide to turn. Receiving, conversely, is active, dynamic, and engaged. It is oriented toward what is already in motion, a recognition of the divine flow that is already present and available. It is opening your hands and heart, digging channels, preparing vessels, ready to hold what is currently being poured out. Think of the extraordinary story of the widow in 2 Kings, a woman on the brink of financial ruin, facing the heartbreaking loss of her sons to debt slavery. She did not passively wait for oil to miraculously appear. She moved. She acted in faith. She gathered every single empty vessel she could find from her neighbors, not merely the ones she thought she needed, but every available container, a testament to her expanding faith and her willingness to create space. And then, at the prophet Elisha's instruction, she began to pour from her single cruse of oil. And the oil did not stop flowing. It did not cease its miraculous multiplication until she literally ran out of containers. The miracle, the outpouring, had a ceiling. And that ceiling was not God's boundless generosity, which is infinite and inexhaustible. No, the ceiling was her capacity to hold what was coming, her readiness to receive what God had already set in motion. Her faith was not just in God's ability to provide, but in her own willingness to prepare for that provision. And I need to pause here to create a sacred space for an honest, searching question that goes beyond mere intellectual assent and penetrates into the depths of your practical spiritual life. Have you truly been building your containers? Have you moved beyond merely praying for the overflow, a beautiful and necessary act of faith, to actually expanding the vessels of your life, the very structures of your being, to hold what God has already decided to pour into you? Because let me assure you, unequivocally, the overflow is real, the promise is real, the boundless abundance of heaven stands ready to manifest in your life. But if the interior life, the unseen architecture of your spirit and character, is not being actively expanded, if the character that defines you, the discipline that guides you, the consistency that anchors you, the integrity of who you are when absolutely no one is watching, when the spotlight of human approval is absent, if those vessels have not been stretched, meticulously cleaned and fortified, then the oil, the blessing, the miraculous flow will stop early. It is not an act of divine punishment, a punitive withdrawal of grace. It is a fundamental spiritual physics. You cannot hold, sustain, or steward what you have not built the capacity for. Imagine trying to catch an ocean with a thimble. The ocean's generosity is not the limit, but the thimble's capacity is. The stopping of the oil is a gentle, divine pause, an invitation to grow, to expand your inner landscape, so that the next outpouring can be truly limitless, sustained, and abundant. And what is coming next will likely shift something inside you that you did not expect, perhaps even something you have unconsciously clung to. It always does, for truth often reshapes us in unexpected ways. Because here is where the confrontation truly begins, the moment we shine a light on the hidden drivers of your spirit, that profound restraint you practiced this week, that conscious decision for silence in the face of provocation, that deliberate walk away from conflict, that arduous moment you swallowed the sharp retort and stifled the immediate reaction. I told you that was your weapon, a powerful tool in your spiritual arsenal. And it was, truly. But now, I need you to sit with the deeper implications, to honestly confront why it was so incredibly hard. Why did walking away, an act of strength and self-preservation, feel so profoundly like losing? Why did silence, a choice for inner peace, feel like an ultimate surrender, a waving of the white flag? Why did not reacting, a demonstration of spiritual maturity, feel akin to dying, a visceral loss of self? It is because somewhere, deep beneath the active surface of your breakthrough, beneath the fervent prayers and the confident declarations and the unwavering faith you have cultivated, there has been a primal, deeply human need for acknowledgement, a profound, almost invisible hunger to be seen in the right, to be publicly vindicated in front of the very people who doubted you, who dismissed you, or who deliberately wronged you. There is a deep yearning to have that undeniable moment where what you endured, the pain you suffered, the strength you mustered, becomes glaringly obvious and undeniable to everyone who watched you struggle, to witness their recognition of your unjust suffering. This desire, while understandable, can become an unseen tether to your past. And let me be absolutely clear. God is not shaming you for that desire. That deeply human hunger for vindication is not, in itself, sin. It is a natural byproduct of our inherent longing for justice and righteousness. But if it is subtly driving the timeline of your peace and progress, if it is the invisible thread tied to your deepest sense of rest, so that your spiritual peace is conditional on being seen and publicly acknowledged. If your trust in divine timing is contingent on vindication arriving publicly, swiftly, and visibly, then what began as a human motivation has subtly transformed. It has become a chain dressed in the alluring garb of a spiritual motivation. It's a gilded cage holding you captive to external validation. Consider the epic journey of Joseph. He did not get to see his brothers bow immediately, nor did he receive instant recognition for his integrity or his prophetic dreams. His path was a brutal crucible. He went from the deep, dark pit of betrayal to the house of Potiphar, where he faced false accusations, then to the desolate confines of prison, before finally ascending to the opulent palace as second in command of Egypt. This journey spanned years, a full and rigorous formation that forged his character, purified his heart, and expanded his capacity for divine purpose. And the vindication, when it finally came, years later, was not primarily designed for his personal satisfaction or the gratification of his ego. It was profoundly designed for their salvation, the salvation of his brothers, the very ones who had wronged him, and through them, the preservation of an entire nation and the lineage of a covenant people. He had to become something so far beyond the wound, so utterly transformed by his walk with God, that when the moment arrived and he saw their faces, twisted with fear and guilt, he could look upon them with eyes of grace and profound understanding. He could declare with genuine spiritual authority, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." This was not just a powerful statement, it was the testament of a man who had truly transcended his pain. He was not performing forgiveness for an audience, not just uttering words of pardon while bitterness festered secretly beneath the surface. He had genuinely outgrown the deep, corrosive need for revenge, for personal retribution, for even the satisfaction of seeing them grovel. The wound no longer defined him. It had become a scar, a testimony, not an open gash demanding payment. And that, my beloved soul, is the profound and liberating place heaven is calling you to, not a superficial place where you pretend the wound did not happen, where you deny the reality of your suffering or the injustice you faced. No, it is a deeper, more powerful place where the wound, though acknowledged and remembered, no longer has the authority to make decisions about your future, to dictate your peace, or to limit your potential. It is a place of sovereign freedom where your spirit is no longer tethered to the pain of the past, but is free to soar into the limitless possibilities of your divinely ordained future. And yet, beneath even that profound revelation, beneath the layers of vindication and forgiveness, there is one more, even deeper layer. And this is the part that is going to feel unexpected, perhaps even confronting in its intimacy, because it is the part that does not come from outside of you at all, but from the most sacred and guarded chamber of your own heart. It is the final frontier, the last veil to be lifted, the real thing holding you at the threshold of your blessing, the actual, undeniable final barrier between you and the fully inhabited promise, between you and the complete possession of all that God has spoken over your life, is not the enemy, though he certainly tries to exploit it. It is not the people who failed you, who disappointed you, or who deliberately hurt you. It is not the lingering delay that stretched your patience to its limits, nor the unanswered prayer that echoed in the silence of your heart, nor the stubborn circumstance that has not yet shifted despite your fervent pleas. No, the last, most subtle, yet most formidable thing standing between you and the complete, unreserved possession of what God has unequivocally spoken over your life is your intricate relationship with your own worthiness. Not a mere performance of worthiness, an external display of piety or effort designed to earn favor. Not simply declarations that you are enough, though those affirmations are good and necessary. It is an actual, deeply rooted interior agreement, a profound and unshakable conviction in the reality that heaven chose you specifically, deliberately, with intentionality, not by cosmic default, and certainly not by some divine mistake. It is the understanding that your unique name, your very essence, was written into the grand tapestry of divine purpose before your name was ever inscribed on a hospital birth certificate. It is the knowing that the intricate blueprint for your life, with all its glorious detail and potential, was drawn in the boundless realm of eternity, and that temporal time, with all its passing seasons and fleeting circumstances, has never had the ultimate authority to cancel that divine plan, only to sequence it, to unfold it according to a higher, more perfect timing. This inner agreement is the key that unlocks the final door, because here is what happens precisely at that sacred threshold. God, in His infinite grace and perfect timing, says, "Enter. The door is open, the way is clear, the promise is ready." And something, often subtly, almost imperceptibly, yet powerfully, hesitates inside you. Not because you do not believe He said it. You do, intellectually. You believe it for other people with perfect, crystal-clear clarity. You can discern the anointing, the calling, the divine favor on a stranger's face, and proclaim it with complete confidence, encouraging them with unwavering conviction. But when you turn that same radiant certainty, that same unwavering faith, on yourself, something deep within flinches, something ancient shrinks, something whispers, a serpentine doubt slithering into the quiet chambers of your heart. But are you sure it meant me? Are you certain I am not the exception to this grace, the anomaly in this divine promise? Are you positive I have not done too much, waited too long, fallen too many times to truly qualify for this unmerited favor? These whispers are echoes of old wounds, not new attacks. And that persistent whisper, that subtle voice of self-doubt, is the last wall. It is the final barrier, often invisible, yet as strong as steel. And crucially, it does not come from hell. It does not originate from the direct assault of the enemy who merely exploits existing vulnerabilities. It comes, unequivocally, from a wound, a deep, unhealed place within your own soul, a residue of past pain, rejection, or self-condemnation. And wounds, fundamentally, need healing, not warfare. They need the gentle touch of the healer, the soothing balm of grace, the compassionate understanding that allows for repair and restoration, not the aggressive tactics of battle that only exacerbate the raw ache. You cannot fight a wound. You must tend to it with tenderness and truth. So tonight, before anything else, before you engage in any other spiritual discipline, this is what I am asking you to do. Not to claim the promise with striving and force, not to rebuke the enemy with renewed vigor, for he has already been shut out, not to war for the blessing as if it were a contested territory. I am asking you, with every fiber of your being, to simply receive, to open the deepest, most guarded places of your heart and soul, and let what God has already irrevocably spoken over you land fully, deeply, and completely in those interior places you have been unconsciously protecting, shielding from even divine affirmation. To stop standing just outside the threshold of your own life, your hand hovering over the doorknob, waiting for permission that has already been abundantly, freely, and eternally given. Step in. You are not the exception to grace. You are not a footnote to the divine narrative. You are not the asterisk next to the promise, denoting a condition or a caveat. You are, in the most profound sense, the very reason the promise was made, the object of heaven's unwavering affection and intention. And it is time to walk through that door, not because you finally earned it through tireless effort, not because you finally figured it all out with intellectual prowess, but because you were always, from the very blueprint of eternity, supposed to be on the other side of it, living in its fullness, basking in its reality. Place your hand on your chest right now. Feel your own heartbeat, a steady rhythm of life pulsating beneath your fingers. That unwavering sound, that consistent beat, is a sacred symphony that heaven chose to keep going, deliberately, miraculously, through absolutely everything you survived, through every storm, every valley, every moment of despair. And now, with that tangible reminder of enduring life, speak this over yourself with everything in you. Let it resonate in every cell of your being. I release the weight of this season. I release the lie that I disqualified myself. I release the need for public vindication, and I trust heaven's timing and method. I am not behind. I am not forgotten. I am not the exception. I am exactly who God said I am, chosen before the foundations of the earth, covered by grace that does not expire, and standing right now at the conclusion of the hardest chapter I will ever live. This door is sealed behind me. That season cannot follow me forward. I walk into what has been prepared for me, not striving, not performing, but receiving, fully, freely, and without apology. The decree is real. The promise is mine. And I will never have to fight that fight again. It is finished, and so am I, with everything that tried to stop me. If this message reached something inside you that has not been reached in a long time, do not move past this moment alone. Share this with someone who is standing at their own threshold tonight, someone who needs to hear that their silence was a weapon and their exhaustion is not failure, but finality. Leave a word in the comments. Tell me what broke open in you today. And if you are not yet part of this community, this is your sign to stay, because there is more coming, and what is ahead of you in this channel is connected to what God is building in your life right now. This was not random. Stay close. You are going to want to see what comes next.